Good afternoon and welcome to another in our series, Pathways to Prosperity, Building Strong Communities for Business Success. We want to thank our sponsor, Kennebunk Savings, for making this series possible for our members. Today, we're going to discuss an important topic to our workforce, building tomorrow's workforce, collaborative strategies for education and career pathways. We have great people here to share their expertise. Ann Banks from the Apprenticeship program, the manager of the program in Community College System of New Hampshire, and Debbie's putting the bios in the chat. JoAnna Luiso, a director of the Career and Professional Development Center at Southern New Hampshire University, and the Director of Education and Career Initiatives in New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, Michael Turmelle. I'll stop sharing. We have, I'll share a snippet of the bio of each because they're extensive. As I said, we put it in chat. Anne is the apprenticeship program manager of the community college system. She currently coordinates the efforts of Apprenticeship New Hampshire team to assist businesses with building pre-apprenticeship to registered apprenticeship pathways. Prior to taking on this role, she was Apprenticeship New Hampshire High School Grant Manager and worked closely with the Apprenticeship New Hampshire team since 2018. JoAnna Luiso brings nearly 20 years of expertise in higher education, specializing in career services as the director and the Career and Development Center at Southern New Hampshire University. She leads a dynamic and talented team, guiding the strategic implementation of diverse programs, services, and events that promote career planning as a lifelong process. And finally, Michael Turmelle is the Director of Education and Career Initiatives at the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. He works with a team of professionals who are focused on equity, racial justice, and opportunity in education from cradle to career. Prior to his work, Michael worked in both higher education and public schools for more than 26 years. So extensive experience, as I mentioned, and please feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A or chat during our webinar, and we'll keep track as much as we can. We'll address the questions. We will also have a Q&A at the end. And to start, I'm going to ask that each of our speakers tell us about their experience and their own programs providing these career pathways for our students. And I'll start with Michael and give you the mic and the screen.
Thank you, Zena. As Zena said, my name is Michael Turmelle from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, and Zena did a great job of sort of showcasing the work that we do in the education work as part of our greater portfolio of work at the Charitable Foundation. Education is just one of the issue areas that we are focused on, and it's mentioned explicitly in our new strategic plan, Together We Thrive, that education is a key pillar in our strategy. Today, I'm going to share some information with you about just one part of the work that I do. My work encompasses policy and advocacy in education, grant making. I work with a great team of student aid personnel who manage our scholarship program and work in the K-12 space as well. This work is part of the career pathways work that I do with the Charitable Foundation. And I'm going to highlight a program for you today that has been in existence for about 4 years. We refer to it as our Career Pathway Partnership Grant Program. It originally started as a competitive grants program, so it was open to anyone in the state of New Hampshire who was connected in some way, shape, or form to a nonprofit organization. And folks basically took the model that we created and built hyper-local career pathway partnerships in all places across the state. We currently have funded 15 projects spanning the entire state of New Hampshire and all different sectors, healthcare workforce, mechanical trades, advanced manufacturing. We've done work with the CVS pharmacy to create pathways for folks with developmental delays to enter the workforce as pharmacy technicians. Now, pretty much if there's a workforce need in New Hampshire, we've been in some way, shape, or form involved with creating a hyper-local career pathway. Essentially, this work is part of our work at the Charitable Foundation because we believe that giving both young people and incumbent employees who are currently in low-skill, low-wage jobs an opportunity to enter into a higher-paying job in the workforce that it pays a family-sustaining wage with the potential for upward social mobility is critical. And to the degree that we can influence creating low-cost or no-cost pathways into those workforce opportunities, the better it is that we think young people will do economically in the future. So this program, as I mentioned, started about 4 years ago. Our grants in this program are relatively small, under $10,000. And the funds that the Charitable Foundation earmarks for this program are really geared toward helping folks who have faced some sort of barrier to participation. Could be that they lack transportation, could be that they're low income and cannot afford tuition if there are courses involved, could be that they have food insecurity or housing insecurity. And so our grant dollars are intended to sort of fill the gap. If a student needs, for example, to buy a stethoscope and scrubs to enter into a certified medical assistant program, our grant dollars can be used to pay for those things for low-income folks. Our whole purpose for that is to essentially remove barriers for participation so that anyone who wants to participate in this workforce development program can participate. The model that we created essentially outlines 4 key participants or partners that we think ought to be at the table in order to create vibrant and sustainable partnerships into the future. Some business entity or workforce, an employer, for example, that has a specific need for workforce, some potential pool of participants. It could be incumbent employees already working in your organization, but it could also be high school students or students at the local career and technical education center who are looking for a low cost or no cost entry into a pathway. We want there to be some sort of accrediting organization associated. So some organization like a career school, a trade school, community college, a state agency, some organization that can award a credential. One of the components that we hope every participant will earn through participation in one of these programs is an industry recognized credential. That could be something like an associate's degree, but it could also be something more short-term in nature, like an OSHA certification or a Workforce Ready New Hampshire certification. But we want some sort of accrediting organization to be a participant. And then the last sort of pillar on the stool, the 4th leg, is some business supporting entity if one exists in the area, like a chamber of commerce. Our thinking is that if a local chamber of commerce or some other local business supporting entity learns how to build these hyper-local career pathways, then they can replicate that for other businesses or employers in their catchment area. So I'll stop there and just say one of the things that I've asked Zena to share with the audience that's joined us today is a research report that was just released by the University of New Hampshire through the Carsey School for Public Policy. UNH was actually one of the grantees for one of the 15 projects that we've supported. And as part of their project in the Mount Washington Valley area, they did a research study of our overall model to see how effective it was, what were areas of strength and what areas could be improved. And so their final report just came out a couple of weeks ago. And I'll ask Zena to share that with you at the conclusion of today's event. Thank you, Zena.
Yes, thank you, Michael. And you're going to get all these resources in a follow-up email with the recording of this webinar, as well as a link to bios and any resources the speakers share. Next, I'd like to welcome Anne to share about the Apprenticeship New Hampshire program and what they do.
Thank you, Zena. Hi, everybody. I am just going to pull my slides up so that you can see them. Hopefully everybody can see that, and we are
Yes.
Zoom ready.
Looks
So as Zena said, I am from Apprenticeship New Hampshire. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that today and about our program and how we've grown and where we plan to go from here. So Apprenticeship New Hampshire is a workforce training program of the community college system. We are fully funded through federal grants from the U.S. Department of Labor. And we have been in existence since 2017. And we help businesses build registered apprenticeships with the Office of Apprenticeship, as well as connect career seekers with those programs. So we really work as an intermediary. So since 2017, we have helped develop over 100 new registered apprenticeship programs. We have pre-apprenticeship programs for high school students and adults, and we've supported over 1,000 apprentices. So our team, with the grants that we've received, we've continued to grow and grow throughout the years. So we've started as a very small 3-person team that was trying to cover the whole state. And now with the amount of grants that we have, we've actually developed 4 fully staffed regional hubs that are all based around our community colleges. Within those hubs is a staff to help the career seekers connect to the programs and businesses build the programs. So there are developers. We have apprentice resource navigators who really sit and work with the apprentice to connect them to financial supports. And then we also have all of our colleges and our workforce development directors at each college. We are in Southern, which is part of Manchester Community College and Nashua Community College. Then we have the Western region, our Western hub, which is River Valley Community College. We have our East Central, which works with NHTI, Great Bay Community College, and Lakes Region Community College. And then our Northern hub is with White Mountains Community College. And really the purpose of those hubs is to bring together stakeholders to build the workforce and meet the needs within each of those regions, because we all know that New Hampshire is a beautiful state. It's a very varied state. The Southern region is not like the Northern region. And so each one has its own unique needs and industries. So our goals really are to build that sustainable infrastructure, to build registered apprenticeship pathways from pre-apprenticeships for high school students, for adults who are trying to enter in, for marginalized populations to get into registered apprenticeship programs and career paths. We really are focused with some of our latest grant money is to promote a greater diversity and equity and making sure that the programs that we're building are really accessible to everybody. It's not going to do anybody any good if we're building programs and people can't get into them. We are really improving apprenticeship resources and networks. Our goal is to help employers really build out those career pathways within their organizations and really have apprenticeship be, another household name. It's not an alternative pathway, it is a pathway. And so building and expanding those programs and the availability of those programs. So it really all starts with what a registered apprenticeship is. And one of the key factors is that registered apprenticeship is industry-led. All apprenticeships begin with an employer. There needs to be an employer or an association or an agency that steps up and says, I will sponsor this occupation in this program because it's going to fill that workforce need for that employer. It is a paid job. Apprentices are employees from day one. The 2 key components really are structured on the job learning and mentorship. with supplemental education. So what that all means is that somebody is learning hands-on on the job. They may be going to school at night. They may be going to school a few days a week. They're taking what they learn and then they're at school and then bringing it to the workplace. And at the workplace, there's a mentor who is really helping coach them through. It doesn't have to be the direct trainer, but somebody who's really taking them under their wing to really support them as they're going through their program. All programs, like I had already mentioned, are really built to increase diversity. We want to make sure that the programs that we're building are accessible to everybody. It should have supportive services. So whether that's from our grant or whether we're connecting with other resources, state and local, other federal resources to really wrap around the apprentice so that they can be successful. And one of the things that we're really trying to focus on still is building those sustainable partnerships. So I joke all the time and say, you know, we're trying to work Apprenticeship New Hampshire out of a job so that everybody in these hubs is all working together to start building those apprenticeship pathways on their own. So we're really trying to have those, build those partnerships and give people the skills to build this. So with registered apprenticeships, there's pre-apprenticeships, which sounds just like what it is, right? So it's anything that comes before a registered apprenticeship. There is a framework for a high quality pre-apprenticeship. I like to call them apprenticeships light because they really have all of the same components. There should be in a curriculum that aligns with a registered apprenticeship program. There should be some kind of a simulated experience, a work experience for people. There should be a facilitated entry. We love programs that are guaranteeing direct entry for an apprentice who successfully completes a pre-apprenticeship program, but, you know, at least promising a guaranteed interview for the person when they finish that would be the lowest benchmark. Increasing diversity, supportive services, and sustainable partnerships. So really with a pre-apprenticeship, those are all of the frameworks and the components. The main thing about a pre-apprenticeship is there has to be a registered apprenticeship for the pre-apprenticeship to feed into. It is that pathway. So they aren't standalone programs. They're programs that build on the other pieces. So what we do, and forgot about this one. So we are actually in the high school space. We have many employers who are hiring high school students to be apprentices. Some will start on that pre-apprenticeship to registered apprenticeship pathway. They'll work at the they'll do some on-the-job exploration. They will do some schooling at the career and tech ed centers. We have standalone education programs that they can access, and Running Start, early colleges, extended learning opportunities. Those are all things available to high school students. So, like I had mentioned in the beginning, we really take the heavy lift of program development off of the employer. We'll sit with the employer. We help map out what that pathway can look like. We also have assist with recruitment of apprentices and pre-apprentices. Right now, one of our grants allows us to provide incentive funding for employers. So there's $4,000 that if an employer wants to sign up on a program and they do that within 3 months of our meeting, they can get $4,000 to go offset the costs of the program. And then there's also, you know, incentives for retention. And then we have many subawards being issued for planning grants, or if somebody has a pre-apprenticeship program that they want to expand, or they have an idea of what they want to do. We have funds for curriculum design. We also can reimburse up to 50% of wages. And then we also, you know, we do a lot for continued support of the program, always checking in. Another key piece that we can do is really support the apprentice. So we offer apprentices a one-time $2,000 scholarship to go towards their education costs of the registered apprenticeship program. And then we also have up to $1,500 in what's called supportive services. So those wraparound services. Michael had mentioned, things like transportation, car repairs, childcare, uniforms, tools, books, anything that's a barrier. And that lasts through, that's the one time of $1,500, not 15,000, $1,500 per apprentice. So this is our team. It's greater than this. We wouldn't be able to fill the slide, but our contact information is there, and I'll share that out with Zena, and she can share that out as well.
Thank you, Anne. That's wonderful. And our final speaker, JoAnna, is going to highlight a different segment. It's the college students and the partnerships that they do at Southern New Hampshire University to ensure career pathways for their students.
Thanks, Zena. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm hoping everybody can see.
Yes.
Excellent. So happy to be here today to share a little bit more about the work of the Career and Professional Development Center and the way in which we support students, but also more importantly, the way in which we engage with our employer partners and how important they are to our work. But I'm hoping that I could ask the audience to just indulge me for a little bit. And by using the chat function, I'm going to ask you a few questions that I'm hoping you might answer. But first, what's important to know is in order for us to best support our students, we have to know a little bit about them. And as Zena mentioned, the office that I work in supports our campus population. And so many of you are familiar with SNHU as a driving force in the online education space with over 170,000 online learners and growing all throughout the country. The campus is a 3,000 student campus, and that's the population that my office supports. And those students are what we would consider to be traditional age college students, 18 to 22, a little bit older, who are coming to campus for what we might call a coming of age experience. So many are living residentially on the campus, some are commuting, but they are just launching into their careers. And so for us, it's important to have an understanding of who they are in order to best support them. So for my questions, I'm going to ask you to attempt to get into the mind of an 18-year-old. So let me go ahead and ask you my first question. First of all, this is coming from a survey. So we survey students, or the campus surveys students every year before they come to college and asks them a whole bunch of questions. But these are some of the questions that I like to pose all of you to help answer. What do you think an 18-year-old coming to college for the first time is most excited about?
Freedom, living away from home.
Yes. What else?
New friends,
Mm-hmm.
meeting other people, food services.
It
Opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, opportunity.
Yeah.
Learning new
Learning new
things.
Yeah. All the things, right? These are just their top, right? They're excited about other things, but they're top, right? They're really excited about coming to a place where they can oftentimes start new. We often talk to students who have been in elementary, middle, and high school with the same individuals. And so that can be wonderful, right, from a stability standpoint. But when they're 18 and they're ready to embark on this, new life, they really are excited to start fresh and kind of reinvent themselves in a way. They're most excited about being away from home. I mean, I know that's not really shocking, but they're excited to be able to have that level of independence. And for oftentimes, that comes with, this whole new environment that is exciting, but also equally, right, brings a lot of fear and trepidation too. So on the converse side, what do you think they're most nervous about when we ask them that? Yep.
Picking a major,
Picking a major, the unknown. Yeah.
fitting in, whether they are academically prepared, failing. All the same things, and being away from home, probably, yes.
The audience is exactly right. So essentially, it's many of the same things. So, you know, meeting new people, but that also means having to make new friends. That's been a big thing, I think, coming out of the pandemic, where students have felt like there's been a bit of a struggle from a social standpoint to kind of feel comfortable. And we're starting to see that shift happen, where students are feeling more connected to each other, but for a very long time, they felt very disconnected. They're really nervous, especially if they're living residentially on the campus, about their roommates. And that can be a big, plus or minus depending on a student's experience. The academic piece is always something that they're concerned about. Can they handle the rigor of college? Are they going to be able to persist and do well? Because they're being told all throughout high school that college is a whole new ball game, right? The amount of learning that you're going to do is kind of condensed in a shorter period of time. And so there's a lot of that, maybe drinking from a fire hose concept for students. So they're super nervous. And I think many of our students are extraordinarily pragmatic. And that money and financial piece that they're taking on, potential student loan debt to go to college, is a huge piece for them. So how are they going to be able to not only continue to pay for school, but how are they going to be able to have the money to live? So many of our students also simultaneously work, whether it's working a campus job or working outside of the campus. So they have a lot of things on their mind that are both good and bad. When we ask students the last question, which is, what resources or support did they use in high school? When we're thinking about that they were potentially struggling, who and do you think that they went to in high school? I know parents think it's their parents, but I'll reveal the answers.
Counselors,
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah. So when they're struggling in school, here are their top folks that they typically go to. Their teachers are always number one. And I know, like, parents are on the list. So anybody who is a parent of a young adult, don't worry. Parents are there, but these are their typically top three when they're struggling academically or have a problem in school. They will go to those individuals. And so you might be wondering, well, what does all of this have to do with career services? And it has a lot to do with career services. So obviously the thing that sticks out the most is, where's that career piece on there? What are they excited about that? Yes and no. I think that first coming into college, it's not necessarily, they know why they're here, but it's not top of mind for them. It's on the list. It usually falls somewhere in the middle. But it's definitely not in the top 4 or 5. The other piece that's super important to us is understanding who they go to. And in high school, their teachers, their faculty were the individuals that they went to when they were struggling, or when they needed to have questions answered. And so for us, that's so important, because we are not a required service. So students are not required to come and meet with an advisor. So we have to figure out new and inventive ways to get in front of students. And essentially, we meet them where they are, and that's in the classroom. So the team is out and about, creating a sense of visibility. We're not just staying in our offices. We wouldn't be doing our job very well if we were. And so it's not only ensuring that students know who the advisors are and what we do, making sure that they're embedding themselves in the classroom and beyond. And it's the same function that we utilize with our employer partners. And employers can engage with the university in a variety of ways, but most importantly, it's important to begin that they meet students where they are. So I'll show you a few examples. And really what it is, it's about blending academics and career. So we know we have a captive audience. They're sitting in the classroom, they're learning. And so that's where we oftentimes bring our employer partners. So here are a few examples of how our employer partners engage with students in the classroom. And we bring them in as guest speakers. Oftentimes, students are just pretty unfamiliar with what's out there. They don't necessarily understand companies. They just know what's familiar to them, certain brands, or as consumers, what they buy. And so they don't know area businesses and companies. And so bringing guest speakers in, individuals who have either been working in industry for a while, or those who are really new to the workforce, they're extremely relatable to a young adult in the classroom. Our employer partners oftentimes work with faculty to present projects. And really that is an amazing way for students to get an inside view of what it's like to potentially work on something for a company. And so these can be short-term projects, they can be case studies. Oftentimes we'll have an employer partner have a challenge, right, that they need to have solved, and they're looking for students to help them do that. And so that's where the projects come into play. Employers will open their doors for site visits, especially if it's a company where there's a lot of things happening and a lot of divisions and a lot of movement. So it gives students a nice view of what it might be like to work in that environment. And then lastly, which I think, in my opinion, is one of the most important components of our relationship with employers, is that they inform oftentimes our curriculum. Employers are, they really will dictate what the workforce is. And so for us, it's our responsibility as an educational institution to ensure that we are building students' skills and competencies that map back to the workforce. So we bring our employers back in and as advisors and into advisory panels when we're looking at curriculum and understanding what are employers looking for. What about specific hiring needs? Right now, we're talking a lot about jobs of the future, opportunities that we don't even know exist yet. And our employer partners are really key to help us understand. So I always call it reverse engineering. So we have an understanding of what our employer partners are looking for in terms of a workforce, and then we work backwards in order to help prepare our students to be viable candidates. And then second, our employers engage with students in what we would call maybe some more traditional things that are outside of the classroom, and that many of our partners on the call may have already been doing with campuses, but participating in career fairs, engaging in what we call like special events that may not be a fair, but unique and different. So an example, we run a large mock interviewing event, and our employer partners love to come back to mentor and guide students through the interview process. And so it's a great way for students to engage with an employer partner, but in a mentorship capacity, not just to talk about an available job or internship experience. And then of course, internships, right? So as Anne was speaking, I was just nodding my head because I'm a big fan of apprenticeships, and internships are similar, and co-ops are similar in that vein. It's like where students are going out and applying what they're learning in the classroom in a real world work environment, which is so important. It helps them to understand what they love and what they don't love, and it helps to refine their pathway. And internship experiences are super important, and our employer partners play a huge role in providing those experiences for students. Then we also look at it as it's going to create a workforce development opportunity, right? So oftentimes our employer partners are hiring our students for internships in the hopes that they will progress into a full-time work experience once they graduate with the company. There's opportunities for companies, and specifically not just nonprofits, but companies in general, to provide service learning opportunities where students can volunteer their time. Volunteering is a big piece for our students to become engaged, and civic engagement is really important, and community engagement is part of that. And then lastly, that mentoring piece that I talked about, which is really key, that employer partners can come at it from a helping standpoint. So you have a lot of individuals and young adults who have really not had a mentor in their life or someone who might be able to support them through their professional development that are currently working in an industry that they're interested in. And so we have fostered and hosted mentorship, both high touch and low touch programs here at the university, and our employer partners play a huge role in all of that. So as you can see, we can't do our work without all of you engaging with our students and ensuring that there is a component of like integration into the community where students understand what's out there for themselves, and they also have an understanding of career pathways and what's possible. And so that's basically, I guess, a high level overview of our work, and I will go ahead and I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, JoAnna. And please include all your questions in chat, or feel free to drop them in the Q&A. I will start asking my questions, but please feel free to add yours, or if you want to raise your hand. And Michelle has a question right away. Go ahead, Michelle.
Well, I was intrigued, JoAnna, you mentioned bringing in companies to kind of advise you on curriculum. I'm wondering if they're starting, as they're thinking about the future of jobs, are they starting to ask about or encourage you to do some work with students to be more like experimental, like creative thinking, and you know, being willing to step outside the box on problem solving? Or is that something?
I think it's something that is what we call a transferable skill, right? Where we want students to stretch their comfort zone. And really what we talk to students about is that they're starting here in an environment where they have the opportunity to learn and grow and change their worldview, express themselves in new and different ways, and get themselves involved in places and spaces where they didn't think they might, be interested in. And so we always start with the campus community as a viable way for students to start to kind of like spread their wings. And when they start with the campus community, like becoming involved with a club or organization or helping to plan an event, then it slowly helps them to start to think, okay, well, I can do that. Now I can stretch myself a little further. I think there's this fear coming from a young adult that they may not be successful and that they are potentially going to, and I use the word fail, but we really encourage students to fail forward. Like, you have to try things and to see if it's something that you're interested in. And if you quote unquote think you fail at it, that's a learning experience. And so I think we have to incrementally get students to slowly start to feel comfortable doing those things. And I think it happens by having this kind of overall college experience that kind of opens their mind to solving problems in different ways. It just helps them to learn and grow. And I hope I answered your question, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to allow you, Claudia, to speak so that you can ask your question.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I don't know what's going on with my video, but I just wondered how, this is to all of the panelists, how are you leveraging the use of technology, replicating opportunities, making opportunities more scalable, broad brushed, wide ranging? Did that make sense? Did I stump the crowd?
No, go ahead. Who wants to take that first? Michael.
I'll just say, Zena, that the model that we've created is really intended to be hyper local. So it's geared towards solving a very specific workforce issue in a very specific community. So the intention is not for the program to be scalable, but the model to be scaled. So what we're hoping is that folks will learn from this model that we've built and be able to replicate it everywhere. So I don't think it's necessarily a technology-based connection, but the intent is small scale, solve problems at the very local level, and use that model to then spread out and solve more issues across the state, workforce issues.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'd love to hear if they have any thoughts or.
Yeah, I would build off what Michael had said. So we are trying to do both, right? So with apprenticeships and in our regional hubs is really focus on what's needed in that region, but then what can be adapted to the other regions to have statewide programs, right? So we're in a great position where we have these fabulous colleges all across the state. So we can make things scalable. But still customized for the need of the region, if that makes sense. As far as technology goes, um, you know, with us, things that we are looking at is more online programs to give some access so that and working online programs into our registered apprenticeships. So, or sharing resources in that way. So, for example, we have LNA programs across the state that are at multiple colleges, but they really are all run out of one. We have licensed nurse practitioners, LPNs, that are run out of River Valley Community College, but they're scalable because we figured out how to bring them to different colleges. And so there's the use of the technology that way, while still having that hands-on feature and that local control within the region, because some of it will be done uniquely at the college, and then some of it will be done online that's from one college broadcast everywhere, if that makes sense.
I wanted to ask Michael to provide an example of one of your projects, because you have many good examples of the collaboration of business, schools, and career progression, a guaranteed job, if you will. So if you can give us a case study.
Sure. I'll highlight a program that actually started very small, again, with a grant that I think we issued around $9,700. We provided that level of support for 2 years. And the project stemmed from, and I'm giving this example because I noticed that Susan French has asked a question about sort of the skilled trades and carpentry. So I'm giving this example so that Susan can hear this as well. The program started really because the Hampton Area Chamber of Commerce expressed a concern amongst a number of its members that were involved in the skilled trades. So HVAC companies, plumbers, electrical companies, in finding qualified individuals to work in their companies. They just were understaffed and needed help. And if anybody's tried to hire a plumber in New Hampshire, you know that the average age for a plumber in New Hampshire is now over 55 years of age. So folks are aging out of that skill set, and there aren't enough young people coming in to fill that. So the Hampton Area Chamber of Commerce, I worked directly with them. The organization that we chose for the participant pool was Winnicott High School students. The program was so successful that within a couple of months, they were calling and asking if students at Portsmouth High School could also participate. And the answer obviously was yes. And then the accrediting organization, the organization that was providing training and certification, is the New Hampshire School for Mechanical Trades. And essentially the way the program worked was that students in Winnicott or in Portsmouth who wanted to participate in this program from day one got assigned to a mentor who was a skilled person in that field. So if you wanted to be a plumber, you were given a person who owned a plumbing company in the Seacoast area who said they would be your mentor. In addition to providing mentorship and coaching, that person also provided the student with an internship experience, so on-the-job learning. While the students were in high school, they packed most of their schedule, the typical high school schedule, into the morning, but in the afternoon, they went to classes at the New Hampshire School for Mechanical Trades for whatever field that they had selected. So the students on the back end were getting connected right in high school with skilled tradespeople and had an on-ramp to a career, a very high-paying, career where there was advancement opportunities. I'm highlighting that program because those two small grants, our dollars were only intended to support students who had faced some sort of barrier. So it wasn't paying for everything. Everybody who was a partner was contributing something. And the program was so successful that in the beginning of the second year, John Nyan, who's the Hampton Area Chamber of Commerce president, invited Governor Sununu and Taylor Caswell, who's the Commissioner for Business and Economic Affairs, over to the site so that they could see what was happening. And as a result of that visit, the governor and commissioner were able to steer over $350,000 in ARPA funding to not only continue that project for 3 years, but because the New Hampshire School for Mechanical Trades also has an office in Manchester, they are replicating that program in the Manchester School District. That's one example of how something really small to try to solve one problem in a community has actually blossomed out into a very large program.
I know Susan had asked a question, and it seems a very specific question. I'm wondering if she could reach out to you and to arrange that for a mentorship. She'd love to train, and I know you serve underserved people as well, and you provided an answer. And I would like to ask you specifically for the businesses that are online. You mentioned in our planning call that they should know a few things, like these are high school students, that they still have to go back to school and they have a schedule. And how do you deal, I guess, all of you, with adapting your career pathway initiatives to accommodate the students' different skill levels and learning styles and their needs?
So we really work from that education space, right? So it's really trying to listen to see what the interests are, what the needs are, and then from both sides, right? So, and we always go from the understanding that employers and businesses want to connect with high school students and youth in schools want to connect with businesses. Sometimes it's just as simple as people don't know who to talk to. So we do have a full high school team. We have 2 phenomenal high school outreach specialists who really help build that gap. So they bring the business and the schools to the table to find out how the program can be built. So like Michael was saying, it's that partnership from the beginning. And, we do try to work with employers. The employers that it works best with are the ones who do understand that these are still high school students, right? Everybody wants the juniors and seniors, or they want seniors in the spring of the last semester of their high school career, when there's proms and graduations and they're doing all of those plannings. But it's really trying to teach both sides that flexibility, having the students understand that, this is a career path, and everything that you're doing right now really is a job interview to stay there for good if you're not hired as an apprentice in the pre-apprenticeship. And then really working with the employers that this could be a student's first job, and they're not going to come with the skills of an outstanding 40 and 50-year-old, and really take a look across your whole workforce. And there may be some high school students who are more responsible than some 40 and 50-year-olds, right? And have that understanding that not everybody's coming in at that same level.
Yes. How do you ensure, all of you have a mission to serve students from underrepresented or underserved communities? How do you ensure that these students have equal access to the resources and support for skill development and career exploration in your programs?
I can jump in here. I think that what we know about students who are part of what we would consider an underrepresented minority group is that oftentimes those students don't access career services. And so we embarked on an initiative probably almost 7 years ago now, where we embed ourselves in the places and spaces where students are. And one of those places, we have an office called the Office of Diversity Programs, and there's a lounge. And students who frequent that lounge. And so we have an advisor that's there twice a week for a couple hours each day and hanging out. And really what has happened is he's built these amazing relationships with students where they may not physically come to our office, but they feel comfortable in that space to have these types of career conversations with him. And we're doing that in other places too, like the Women's Center and the Veterans Lounge. And so we are, like I said earlier on, taking ourselves away from our confines of our office to do this work in order to make sure that we are meeting the needs of those students who historically, may not reach out for our support.
Offer it to anyone else who wants.
I would just say, Zena, that from the Charitable Foundation's perspective, we embed language in our grant documents that specify that our grant funds are to be used only for students that face barriers. And we leave it open, we're not going to identify, but it could be students that have faced discrimination, students that have a learning disability, students that have an income challenge or transportation challenge, or their food or housing insecure. We leave it up to the grant recipient to make the determination because we want to bring flexibility to the program. But that's our target audience for our grant dollars are for students or participants who face some barriers. Other partners who bring resources to the table can focus their resources on other needs. But from the Charitable Foundation's perspective, that's what we want to focus our grant dollars on.
Giving other people a chance here. I have many questions, but if you would like, you can raise your hand. In the meantime, how do you see the role of businesses in shaping career pathways for high school and college students? You've shared some successful examples. You could share some more, but I want you to address the business in the room and let me know what you think their role is.
I can just add a couple of things real quickly, Zena. First and foremost, I would say that businesses ought to recognize that if they have a workforce challenge that they're facing, that they have to be an equal partner in creating the solution. No one else is going to create the solution for you. You have to be actively engaged. And sometimes it's literally, the answer is just a phone call to your local career and technical center or your local high school or your local chamber of commerce. So that's one thing, is just be active in the process. And then the second piece I would just say, and this relates to something that both Anne and JoAnna said, which is that it's very rare that a calendar or a schedule for a business, a high school student, and an accrediting organization like a college or career trade school will align perfectly. There are always days when students at the high school are not in session because it happens to be voting day. And so that's the local polling center is their high school, so they're not in school that day. So the high school calendar and the accrediting organization like a community college calendar don't always jive perfectly, right? High school students in New Hampshire typically have a vacation in February and April, and community college or the higher education sometimes has a spring break in March. So there are everybody, and this is, I'm giving you a little bit of a highlight in the report that was submitted by UNH. Flexibility was one of the key findings that was necessary in order for these programs to be successful. Everyone has to understand that the other person is facing scheduling challenges and just give a little bit of grace in understanding and flexibility.
From the apprenticeship perspective, we can't do anything without a business, so we need you. And it's really to echo what Michael was saying. It's be open to new ideas to solve the problem, right? Because the problem's not going to go away on its own, and you have to be open and think creatively. And so really having an outlined pathway, right? There's kind of this, I think that there's businesses who have clear pathways for people to enter and they continue on. But then there's that unspoken pathway, right? Well, maybe you can enter here and you can go in this direction or you can go in this direction. But having that outlined and shared with students and anybody who's interested in that career, they need to know where that can lead. I think especially, in talking with the expense and hearing that that's one of the concerns is finances for students. They want to know where they're going to end up and where the possibilities are. and then provide on and off ramps. Be willing to share those on and off ramps with other people within your industry, right? Maybe you can only take an individual so far, but partner with another organization that they can then have that promotion and develop that whole pipeline for the industry, not just your organization. In apprenticeships, I have to say it's a great way because you can build those stackable credentials in multiple occupations. So somebody can enter at one level, then they can move to the next, they can move to the next, and it's all laid out for you.
JoAnna, I was wondering if you have feedback from the students who participate in your programs and the businesses. Do you then adjust and continuously improve your career pathways based on those feedback, or surveys or whatever tools you use to get that? And how do you measure the success of your programs?
Yeah, I think feedback is super important with our work, especially when we are rolling out something new, and understanding, what's working and what isn't from a student's perspective is very important, because our local businesses and regional businesses are wonderful partners and want to engage with the campus. We also have to understand that this is a matchmaking piece where we also have to have students interested. And so we are constantly surveying and doing focus groups with students to understand what it is that they want, and then essentially trying to match the business's needs with what students' desires are. Sometimes there's a disconnect, but we do our best to ensure that students feel heard. But also it's important for us to showcase new things to students that they may not have thought they ever were interested or wanted to do. And so it's almost creating this fine balance between understanding needs and meeting those needs, but then also saying, well, you may not realize this is an option, or this event is going to be an important thing for you to attend or join. And so it's like, I would say, like a mixed bag of, fine tuning and reinventing over and over again. It's also really important, I think, from an employer's standpoint, for us to have an understanding of, when students are interning, for example, are there skills gaps? Are there areas of what we would consider to be areas of opportunity for our students? Similarly, when students are interning with companies, where are there gaps in training and development? Are there areas for opportunity for that company to ensure that they are helping a student learn and grow in an experience? And so I think it's this constant feedback loop, and then, iterating and reiterating.
And we have one last question, if we could give it a minute or two. How do you engage younger students that are still impressionable, and at the same time remove the resistance from business to host underage students in the workplace? Anyone work with middle schoolers?
Yeah, I mean, and I've worked in the K-12 system, so I know that there's a lot happening at the middle school level. I think it's based a lot on the high school programming. So a lot of high schools today have what's called an extended learning opportunity coordinator at their school that helps to put students into real world learning situations outside of the walls of the school. In those programs, oftentimes they do reach down into the middle school, but it's at a different level, right? It's at a level that makes more sense for students developmentally. One of the challenges that we face at the high school level, even getting students engaged in the career pathways that we've all identified today, is that many of the industries have rules and regulations about age restrictions for who can participate in programming like that. So if you're putting students, for example, on an advanced manufacturing floor, you can't put a 13 or 12-year-old kid in that situation. So in many cases, there are some barriers to getting students involved at that level. So oftentimes what you'll see in middle schools are things like career fairs or job fairs, or sort of early college career fair planning, so that students are getting exposed. They might have some visits by local businesses or career days where different types of skilled employees show up to talk about their careers and how they are doing. But it's very much age appropriate, taking into consideration the barriers that are placed in front of middle school age kids.
Thank you all. This was very informative. I know it was appreciated by our audience, and we're going to continue to use it as a resource for our businesses. I want to bring your attention, we'll put the link in chat. Our next webinar in the series will be fostering workplace culture in a remote or hybrid environment. So learning the trends of maintaining organizational culture while your employees are either remote. That's another topic, is these students that are joining sometimes are joining remotely. So how do you embed them in your culture? Thank you all, and we hope to see you on a different webinar. Thank you to our speakers.